The city of Guadalajara was alive with distant music and voices, yet in one quiet neighborhood the streets were almost empty. Yellow street lamps glowed against the fading light, their warmth flickering across the modest houses lined neatly along the road. Inside one of those homes, Camila was returning late from her university. Her bag was heavy with books, her steps light with fatigue, and her mind restless from the day's lectures. She unlocked the front door and was greeted by the comforting scent of maize tortillas and spices. "Buenas noches," her mother's voice called from the kitchen. Dona Marisol, with her silver hair tied neatly, was preparing dinner. She was a woman whose calm presence carried strength, a strength built over years of raising Camila alone. Camila placed her bag on the table and sighed. She smiled at her mother, though her eyes betrayed her tiredness. "I have been at the library too long again," she admitted softly. Dona Marisol only shook her head with affection, handing her a plate. The room felt safe, filled with warmth and routine. Yet outside, in the shadows of the street, someone was watching the house. A figure stood still, hidden just enough not to be noticed. His hands were clenched, his breathing sharp, and his eyes fixed on the window where the two women spoke. This man was Javier. To most, he appeared charming, devoted, and protective. To Camila, he had once been the answer to loneliness. But lately, cracks had begun to show. His temper was short, his jealousy unreasonable, and his presence increasingly suffocating. Camila had not yet told her mother of the arguments they had shared in secret. Arguments where Javier accused her of betrayal, where his words turned sharp and his tone controlling. She thought it was love gone wrong, something that could be fixed with patience. But what she did not know was that Javier's obsession had grown into something far darker. That night, while Camila and her mother ate together in peace, Javier's shadow lingered beyond their walls. He whispered to himself promises that no one else could hear, his anger burning hotter with every second. The evening that began in quiet routine was about to be disturbed by a storm neither woman could imagine. Guadalajara's streets carried their usual rhythm, the hum of distant music and the rolling tires of taxis crossing uneven cobblestones. Yet as Camila walked home from the small corner shop, the air felt heavier than usual. She carried a bag of fresh bread and fruit for breakfast, her mind already drifting to her upcoming exam. Behind her, footsteps echoed. Slow at first, then quickening as though to match her pace. She turned, but the street was empty except for a stray dog sniffing at a bin. Camila shook her head and continued. Still, her skin prickled. Javier had been sending her messages all day. Demands, apologies, sudden declarations of love, then silence. The cycle repeated, leaving her unsettled. Camila knew her mother disliked his intensity. Dona Marisol had once warned her gently, "A man who cannot trust is a man who will try to control." When Camila reached the house, she locked the door quickly. She placed the bag on the kitchen counter and exhaled. Dona Marisol noticed her nervous movements. "What troubles you, Hija?" she asked. Camila hesitated, then shook her head with a weak smile. "Just the night air, Mama." But her hands trembled as she poured a glass of water. Outside, unseen by them, Javier's figure had passed the corner of their street again, his steps restless in the shadows. The next morning the sun rose over Guadalajara with its usual golden brilliance. Camila and her mother sat at the breakfast table, but silence lingered longer than usual. Camila checked her phone, then quickly placed it face down. "Javier?" Dona Marisol asked softly. Camila sighed, her shoulders sinking. "He says I do not care for him enough, that I should not spend so much time with my books. He thinks I am with someone else." Her mother reached across the table and touched her daughter's hand. "Love should bring peace, not fear. You must remember that." Camila wanted to believe it. She remembered how Javier once made her laugh with silly stories, how he had promised to take her to the beaches of Puerto Vallarta, how he had kissed her hand with such tenderness. But those moments had grown rare, replaced by suspicion and sudden anger. That afternoon, while she studied at the university library, Javier appeared without warning. His eyes were bloodshot, his shirt wrinkled, as if he had not slept. He sat across from her and whispered fiercely, Why do you ignore me? Who are you with when I call? Camila glanced nervously around, embarrassed. She lowered her voice. Not here, Javier. Please. He leaned closer, his jaw tight. You belong to me, Camila. The words chilled her. She closed her books, stood quickly, and walked away, her heart racing. Javier remained behind, his hand pressed against the table, his breath uneven, his anger thickening like a storm cloud. Days later, Camila accompanied her mother to the bustling market. Colors of fruit and flowers filled the air with life, and the chatter of vendors brought energy to the morning. Yet Camila could not shake the sense of eyes following her. As she helped her mother choose avocados, she noticed a familiar silhouette among the crowd. Javier stood near a stall of spices, staring without blinking. He did not approach, only observed. His gaze pierced through the noise and color. Dona Marisol noticed too. She touched Camila's arm and whispered, "He is watching you again." Camila turned her face away, pretending to focus on the fruit. Her mother's voice lowered. This cannot continue. You must decide what matters more, his approval or your freedom. Camila nodded faintly. She knew the truth, but feared the consequence of telling Javier it was over. As they returned home, she dared one last glance over her shoulder. Javier was gone, yet the weight of his stare followed them all the way to their street. The evening was warm, yet Camila shivered as she studied at her desk. Outside, the sound of cicadas filled the night. She heard a knock at the door, sharp and urgent. Her mother approached cautiously. "Who is it?" she asked. "It's me, Javier," came the reply, his voice strained. Camila froze. She whispered, "Don't open it." But Javier's voice grew louder. "Camila, we need to talk.
Now."
Dona Marisol stood firm. "It is late, Javier. Leave." A long silence followed, then the sound of footsteps retreating. Camila exhaled with relief, but when she peeked through the curtain, she saw him still standing across the street, staring at their home in silence. The night stretched endlessly. Camila lay awake, her mother watching the door. The safe walls of their house suddenly felt fragile, like glass ready to shatter. Morning light did little to ease their nerves. Camila received another flood of messages. Some begged forgiveness. Others threatened despair. "If I cannot have you, no one will," one message read. She deleted it quickly, but her mother saw the fear in her face. "We must go to the police," Dona Marisol urged. Camila hesitated. Shame and confusion knotted her chest. "What if they think I am exaggerating?" Her mother's voice was firm. "Your safety is not exaggeration." That day at the police station, the officer listened but offered little more than a formal warning. Javier had not yet crossed the line of physical violence, and so their report was filed without urgency. Camila walked out feeling invisible, her mother clutching her hand. Meanwhile, somewhere in the city, Javier sat alone, replaying every word of their conversation, his mind consumed by betrayal only he could see. His anger had reached its breaking point. The following evening, the house was quiet. Camila tried to study, while her mother prepared tea. The sound of footsteps outside returned, heavier, closer. A sudden crash startled them. A stone struck the window, cracking the glass. Camila screamed, rushing to her mother's side. Outside, a dark figure moved quickly into the shadows. "Lock the doors," Dona Marisol whispered. Her voice trembled, but her eyes were steady. They bolted every lock, their breaths sharp with fear. Camila clutched her phone, her thumb hovering over the emergency number. But the silence that followed was worse than the crash. The quiet stretched on, pressing against their chests, until every shadow seemed alive. Days passed without sight of Javier. The calm felt unnatural, like the pause before a storm. Camila tried to believe he had given up, but her mother remained alert. One evening, as Camila returned from class, she found an envelope slipped under the door. Inside was a single photograph of her and her mother at the market. Across it, in jagged handwriting, were the words, "You cannot hide." Camila's hands shook. She felt the walls of her life closing in. Her mother tore the photograph in two and spoke firmly, He wants us afraid. We must not give him that power. But even as she said it, her eyes flicked toward the window, watching the street with a fear she could not mask. That night, thunder rolled across Guadalajara. Rain began to fall, striking the streets with urgency. Camila sat beside her mother in the living room, trying to drown her thoughts with the sound of the storm. Then came the knock. Heavy, relentless. "Open the door, Camila." Javier's voice roared through the wood. Dona Marisol rose, her face pale but determined. "Stay behind me," she whispered. The door shook under Javier's fists. When it did not open, silence followed. Then, the sound of glass shattering at the side window. He was inside. Camila's scream pierced the storm. Her mother grabbed her hand, pulling her toward the kitchen, but Javier's figure emerged from the darkness, his eyes wild, a bottle clutched in his hand. Time slowed. The bottle glistened under the lightning's flash, liquid swirling inside. Javier's voice was broken, trembling with rage. "You betrayed me, Camila. You turned her against me." He raised the bottle high. Dona Marisol stepped forward, shielding her daughter with her body. "Stop this madness, Javier," she cried. But her words were lost to the storm. The bottle flew. A spray of liquid arced through the air, striking Dona Marisol's face. Her scream cut the night, raw and agonizing. Camila's world shattered. She rushed to her mother, whose hands clawed at her burning skin, her cries echoing through the house. The smell of acid filled the air, sharp and unbearable. Javier stood frozen for a moment, his rage colliding with sudden horror. Then, without another word, he fled into the rain, his footsteps vanishing into the storm. Camila held her mother close, her tears mixing with the rain that poured through the broken window. The warmth of their safe home was gone, replaced by a nightmare that would mark them forever.